Christopher Bennett's hands shook as he pushed open the front door of his mansion. He had been gone for 3 weeks. 3 weeks since he had handed his house keys to a desperate woman holding a baby in the pouring rain. 3 weeks since he had made the craziest decision of his 42 years of life. The door swung open and Christopher froze. His breath caught in his throat. The foyer, which he remembered being cluttered with unopened mail and dusty furniture, now gleamed under the bright afternoon light streaming through the clean windows. The marble floors shone like mirrors. Fresh flowers sat in a vase on the entry table. The air smelled like lavender and lemon instead of the stale, lonely smell that had filled the house for 2 years. "What in the world?" Christopher whispered, stepping inside slowly. His expensive leather shoes clicked against the pristine floor. He set down his suitcase, his heart pounding. Had she robbed him? Had she sold everything and run? But no. As he walked further into the house, he saw all his belongings exactly where they should be. The paintings his late wife, Rebecca, had collected still hung on the walls. The antique clock in the hallway still ticked steadily. The family photos still sat on the mantel. Everything was there. Everything was just better. Christopher moved through the house like a man in a dream. The living room furniture had been rearranged to let in more natural light. The kitchen sparkled, every surface spotless. Fresh fruit sat in a bowl on the counter. The windows throughout the house were so clean they seemed invisible. He climbed the stairs, his mind racing. Each bedroom he passed had been cleaned and organized. The bathrooms gleamed. In the hallway he noticed the family photos had been dusted and straightened. Someone had cared for his home like it mattered. When he reached the master bedroom, he found his bed made with fresh sheets. A small note sat on the pillow, written in careful handwriting. "Welcome home, Mr. Bennett. Thank you for everything. Lunch is in the refrigerator. Simone Jackson." Christopher sat on the edge of his bed, holding the note. His throat felt tight. He had expected to come home to chaos, or to an empty house with his belongings gone. He had prepared himself for regret, for the evidence that his impulsive act of kindness had been foolish. Instead he had come home to care, to gratitude, to transformation. A soft sound from downstairs caught his attention. A baby's laugh, bright and pure. Then a woman's voice, gentle and singing a lullaby. Christopher stood and walked back downstairs, following the sound to the sunroom at the back of the house. He paused in the doorway, his hand on the frame. The sunroom, which had been his wife's favorite space but which he had let fall into neglect after her death, was alive again. The plants that had been dying now flourished in clean pots. The windows let in streams of golden afternoon light. And there, sitting in the reading chair that Rebecca had loved, was a young woman in a simple blue dress. Her skin was a deep, beautiful brown, and her hair was pulled back in a neat bun. She held a baby girl, maybe 7 months old, on her lap. The baby wore a pink outfit and reached for the book her mother held, babbling happily. The woman looked up and saw Christopher. Her eyes went wide and she immediately stood, holding the baby close. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice nervous but steady. "You're home." Christopher stepped into the room and for the first time in 2 years, the house felt like a home again. "Yes," he said softly. "I'm home." "Would you risk everything you own to help a stranger in need? Would you believe that one act of kindness could change 2 lives forever?" If this story touches your heart, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us share more stories of hope and second chances. The rain came down in sheets, turning the Los Angeles streets into rivers of gray water. Christopher Bennett sat in the back of his town car, his driver navigating toward LAX. His phone buzzed with the final details of his business trip. Singapore. 3 weeks. A major acquisition that would expand his tech company into Asian markets. He barely noticed the weather, focused on his tablet and the presentation he would give to the board of directors in 2 days. His mind calculated numbers, projected growth, market shares. "Sir," his driver Paul said quietly. "There's someone ahead." Christopher looked up. Through the rain-blurred window, he could see a figure huddled under a bus stop shelter. No, not quite under it. The shelter's roof was broken and rain poured through the gap. The figure was trying to shield something with a torn piece of cardboard. As they got closer, Christopher saw it was a young woman. She wore a thin jacket, soaked through, and she was bent over something she held against her chest. Her body curved protectively around whatever she was holding. "Drive past," Christopher started to say, but then he saw the baby. The woman shifted, and Christopher caught a glimpse of a tiny face, red and crying, in the woman's arms. The baby couldn't have been more than a few months old. Both mother and child were drenched, shivering in the cold rain. "Pull over," Christopher heard himself say. "Sir?" Paul looked uncertain. Your flight. Pull over now. The car slid to the curb. Christopher grabbed his umbrella and stepped out into the rain. His expensive suit immediately began to get wet despite the umbrella's protection. He walked toward the bus shelter. The woman looked up as he approached. Her eyes were dark brown, filled with exhaustion and fear. She pulled the baby closer as if expecting trouble. The baby's cries were weak, almost lost in the sound of the rain. Please, Christopher said, raising his voice over the storm. I'm not going to hurt you. The woman didn't move, just watched him with those wary eyes. Christopher held out the umbrella to her. Take this. You need it more than I do. She stared at the umbrella but didn't reach for it. Her hands were too busy trying to keep the cardboard over the baby. What's your name? Christopher asked, crouching down to her level despite the water soaking into his pants. Simone, she said finally, her voice hoarse. Simone Jackson. Simone, I'm Christopher. When did you last eat? Her eyes filled with tears. Yesterday morning. Someone gave me a sandwich. And the baby? Hope, Simone whispered. Her name is Hope. I fed her the last of her formula this morning. Christopher felt something crack open in his chest. This woman had named her baby Hope, even in the middle of homelessness and rain. Even when she had nothing, she had given her child a name that meant everything. He made a decision in that moment that would change both their lives. Simone, I have to leave for a business trip. I'll be gone for 3 weeks, maybe more. I have a house, a big house, and it's empty. I want you to stay there. Simone's eyes widened. I can't. I don't. Yes, you can, Christopher said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his keys. His house keys. This is the address. He handed her a business card with his home address written on the back. There's food in the refrigerator. Clean clothes in the closets. Everything you and Hope need. Why would you do this? Simone asked, tears mixing with rain on her face. Because someone needs to, Christopher said simply. And I can. He pressed the keys into her hand. Then he pulled out his wallet and handed her $300 in cash. For cab fare and anything else you need right away. There's more at the house. Simone looked at the keys, at the money, at Christopher's face. I don't understand. You don't have to understand. You just have to accept. Will you? Will you take Hope somewhere safe and dry? For a long moment, Simone didn't move. Then slowly she nodded. Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Christopher stood. There's a credit card in the kitchen drawer. Use it for food, for diapers, for whatever you need. My housekeeper, Mrs. Patterson, comes on Tuesdays and Fridays. Her number is on the refrigerator. Tell her I sent you. I'll take care of everything, Simone promised, clutching the keys like they were made of gold. I promise I will. I believe you, Christopher said. And strangely he did. He walked back to the car, soaked to the skin, and climbed inside. Paul stared at him in the rearview mirror. Sir, did you just give that woman your house keys? Yes, Christopher said. Your house keys. Yes. Paul was quiet for a moment. Mrs. Rebecca would have liked that. Christopher felt his eyes sting. His wife had been gone for 2 years, taken by cancer at just 39 years old. She had been kind, always helping others. She would have stopped for Simone without hesitation. Yes, Christopher said quietly. She would have. As the car pulled away, Christopher looked back through the rear window. Simone was standing now, holding Hope close, staring at the keys in her hand like they were a miracle. The rain continued to fall, but somehow the world felt a little brighter. Simone stood outside the mansion, her baby girl asleep in her arms, and wondered if this was all a dream. The cab driver had looked at her strangely when she gave him the address, his eyes taking in her wet, torn clothes and the baby wrapped in a thin blanket. But the $300 Christopher had given her was real, and so was the ride to this neighborhood where houses hid behind gates and perfectly trimmed hedges. The house before her was huge. Not just big, but enormous, with white columns and tall windows that seemed to glow even in the gray afternoon light. Simone's hands trembled as she used the key Christopher had given her. It turned smoothly in the lock and the door opened. She stepped into a foyer larger than any apartment she had ever lived in. The ceiling soared above her, and a crystal chandelier hung in the center. Simone carefully closed the door behind her and just stood there, dripping water onto the marble floor. It's okay, baby, she whispered to Hope, who stirred against her shoulder. We're safe now. The house was quiet. Simone walked slowly through the rooms, afraid to touch anything. The living room had furniture that looked expensive, with fabric so clean and soft she was afraid her wet clothes would ruin it. The kitchen was massive, with gleaming counters and appliances that looked like they belonged in a restaurant. She found the refrigerator Christopher had mentioned. Inside was food just as he had promised. Real food. Fresh vegetables, fruit, milk, cheese, eggs. Simone's stomach growled. She hadn't been lying when she told Christopher she had eaten yesterday morning. Before that, it had been 2 days. But first, Hope needed to be fed. Simone found the credit card Christopher had mentioned in the kitchen drawer along with a note. Use this for whatever you need. Don't worry about the cost. Make yourself at home. CB. Simone felt tears spring to her eyes again. She had cried more in the past few hours than she had in months. When you're homeless, you learn not to cry. Crying doesn't find you food or shelter. Crying doesn't keep your baby warm. But kindness, real kindness like this, broke through all those walls. She called a delivery service and ordered formula, diapers, and baby clothes. Then she explored the house more, looking for a place to sleep. Upstairs, she found 6 bedrooms. The master bedroom was clearly Christopher's, with men's clothes in the closet and a photo on the nightstand of Christopher with a beautiful woman, both of them smiling at a beach somewhere. The woman had kind eyes. Simone moved on, not wanting to invade his private space. She found a smaller bedroom at the end of the hall. It had a comfortable bed, a window overlooking a garden, and its own bathroom. It was more than she had ever hoped for. She gave Hope a bath in the bathroom sink, marveling at the clean, warm water that came from the tap. Her baby girl cooed and splashed, happier than Simone had seen her in weeks. After drying Hope with a soft towel she found in the linen closet, Simone dressed her in a clean onesie from her diaper bag, one of only 3 outfits Hope owned. The delivery arrived quickly. Simone fed Hope, who drank the formula hungrily, her little hands grasping the bottle. After Hope fell asleep, Simone finally let herself eat. She made a simple sandwich with the food from the refrigerator, and it tasted like the best meal she had ever had. Then Simone did something she hadn't been able to do in months. She took a hot shower. The water ran over her, washing away weeks of street dirt and rain. She washed her hair 3 times, using the expensive shampoo in the bathroom. When she stepped out, she wrapped herself in a towel so soft and warm she wanted to cry again. She had no clean clothes except the spare shirt in her bag, so she put that on and washed her jeans and jacket in the bathroom sink, hanging them to dry. Then she climbed into the bed, Hope sleeping in a nest of pillows beside her. The sheets were clean and soft. The room was warm. Her baby was fed and safe. Simone lay there in the quiet house and felt something she hadn't felt in so long she had almost forgotten what it was like. She woke the next morning to sunlight streaming through the window. For a moment she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. The rain. Christopher. The keys. This house. Hope was awake, looking around with curious eyes. Simone fed her and changed her diaper, then carried her downstairs. In the daylight she could see the house more clearly. It was beautiful, but there was a sadness to it. Dust covered many surfaces. Mail sat unopened on tables. In the living room she saw photos of Christopher and the woman from his bedroom, but they were dusty, neglected. Simone looked down at Hope. "We can help," she said softly. "We can take care of this place for him." She found cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink. Starting small, she cleaned just the bedroom where she was staying and the bathroom. Then she moved to the kitchen, wiping down the counters and organizing the cabinets. Hope sat in her carrier watching her mother work. By afternoon, Simone was tired but satisfied. 3 rooms were clean. It wasn't much, but it was a start. She found the phone number for Mrs. Patterson on the refrigerator, just as Christopher had said. With shaking hands she dialed. "Patterson residence," a warm voice answered. "Hello, Mrs. Patterson. My name is Simone Jackson. Mr. Bennett told me to call you." There was a pause. "Christopher Bennett?" "Yes, ma'am. He gave me his house keys. He said I could stay here while he's away. I know it sounds crazy, but—" "Did he give you the keys in the rain?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "Yes." "How did you know?" Mrs. Patterson laughed, a kind sound. "Because that man has his wife's heart. She would have done the same thing. Now tell me what you need, dear." Simone felt relief wash over her. "I just wanted to let you know I'm here. And that I'm taking care of the house. I'm cleaning and organizing. I want to help." "Well, isn't that something?" Mrs. Patterson said warmly. "I'll be there Friday as usual. We'll talk then. In the meantime, you make yourself at home. That house needs some life in it again." After hanging up, Simone felt lighter. She wasn't alone in this. She had been given a gift and she was determined to honor it. She spent the rest of the day cleaning, breaking only to care for Hope. When evening came, she made dinner from the food in the refrigerator, sitting at the kitchen table with Hope in her lap. For the first time in months, Simone allowed herself to hope that things might actually get better. Friday morning arrived bright and clear. Simone had spent the week cleaning different rooms each day, always careful to respect Christopher's belongings. She had dusted the photos of him and his wife, handled his books gently, and treated everything like it was precious because to him, it clearly was. Hope was doing better too. With regular feedings and a warm place to sleep, she was more alert and happy. She had even started smiling, something Simone had worried she might never see. When the doorbell rang at 9 o'clock, Simone's heart jumped. She smoothed down her blue dress, one she had bought with Christopher's credit card, along with a few other simple clothes. She had been careful with the card, buying only what was necessary, keeping track of every purchase. Mrs. Patterson stood on the doorstep. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair pulled into a neat bun and warm brown eyes. She took one look at Simone holding Hope and smiled. "Well, come here and let me see that beautiful baby," Mrs. Patterson said, stepping inside. Simone let her in and Mrs. Patterson cooed over Hope, who grabbed the older woman's finger and held on tight. "She's precious," Mrs. Patterson said. Then she looked around the foyer and her eyes widened. "Simone Jackson, you've been busy." "I wanted to help," Simone said quickly. "Everything Mr. Bennett did for us. I wanted to give something back." Mrs. Patterson walked through the house and Simone followed nervously. The older woman didn't say anything as she moved from room to room, taking in the clean surfaces, the organized spaces, the care that had been put into everything. Finally, in the kitchen, Mrs. Patterson turned to Simone with tears in her eyes. "This house," she said softly, "has been sad for 2 years. Mr. Bennett lost his wife Rebecca to cancer. After she died he just gave up on the place. He lives here but he doesn't live here, you understand? He's been going through the motions." Simone nodded. She had guessed something like that from the photos and the neglect. "I come twice a week and do what I can," Mrs. Patterson continued, "but it's been like cleaning a tomb. No matter how much I scrub, the sadness stays." She looked at Simone with something like wonder. "But now it feels different. It feels alive." "I'm just trying to pay back his kindness," Simone said. "No, dear. You're doing more than that." Mrs. Patterson sat at the kitchen table and gestured for Simone to join her. "Now tell me your story. How did you end up in the rain with this sweet baby?" Simone hesitated, then decided Mrs. Patterson deserved the truth. She told her about Hope's father, who had left when she found out she was pregnant. About losing her job when her pregnancy became difficult. About the landlord who evicted her when she couldn't pay rent. About the shelters that were always full, the nights spent in bus stations and under bridges, the constant fear and exhaustion. Mrs. Patterson listened without judgment, just nodding and holding Simone's hand across the table. "You've been through so much," she said when Simone finished. "But you kept your baby safe. You kept going. That takes real strength." "I don't feel strong," Simone admitted. "I feel like I've been failing Hope every day." "Nonsense. You're here, aren't you? You accepted help when it was offered. Do you know how hard that is for most people?" Mrs. Patterson squeezed her hand. "Now let's talk about moving forward. What are your plans?" "I don't know," Simone said honestly. "I want to get back on my feet, find a job, get my own place. But I don't even have a high school diploma. I dropped out to take care of my sick mother when I was 16. She died a year later and I never went back." "Can you read and write well?" "Yes, ma'am. I love reading. I used to go to the library whenever I could." Mrs. Patterson's eyes lit up. "Then we have options. There are programs, free online courses, ways to get your GED. And while you're doing that, you can take care of this house. Not as charity but as a job. Mr. Bennett needs someone here full-time. The place is too big for just me twice a week. Do you think he would agree to that?" Simone asked, hardly daring to hope. "I'll call him today and suggest it. He trusts my judgment." Mrs. Patterson stood. "In the meantime, let me show you how Rebecca used to organize things. She had a system for everything and it worked beautifully." They spent the day together with Mrs. Patterson teaching Simone about the house. She showed her where everything was kept, how the security system worked, which plants needed the most water, and which windows stuck a little when you tried to open them. She also told Simone stories about Rebecca. How she had loved reading in the sunroom. How she had always wanted to help people but got sick before she could do more. How Christopher had loved her completely and how her death had broken something in him. "He needs to see that life can be good again," Mrs. Patterson said as she was leaving that evening. "Maybe you and Hope being here will remind him." That night, after Hope was asleep, Simone sat in the living room with a laptop she had found in Christopher's office. She searched for GED programs and found several free online options. She also looked up parenting classes and found a community center nearby that offered them. She made a list of goals. Get GED. Take parenting classes. Learn a skill she could use for work. Save money. Eventually find her own place, but only when she was truly ready. Then she added one more. 6. Take care of this house like Rebecca would have wanted. Simone closed the laptop and looked around the living room. The photos of Christopher and Rebecca seemed to glow in the lamplight. She walked over to one, a picture of them at what looked like their wedding, both laughing and covered in confetti. Thank you, Simone whispered to Rebecca's image. Thank you for raising a man who stops in the rain for strangers. The house settled around her, warm and safe. Hope slept upstairs, fed and content. And for the first time since she had found out she was pregnant, Simone felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. 2 weeks had passed since Mrs. Patterson's first visit. Simone had settled into a routine that felt almost normal. She woke each morning with Hope, fed her, and then spent the day cleaning, organizing, and slowly bringing the house back to life. She had also started her online GED courses. Every afternoon, while Hope napped, Simone sat at the kitchen table with the laptop and worked through lessons. Math was hard. She hadn't thought about algebra in years. But she pushed through, determined. Mrs. Patterson came twice a week as promised, and the two women had become friends. The older woman brought supplies, offered advice, and most importantly, believed in Simone's ability to succeed. "You're doing so well," Mrs. Patterson said one Tuesday afternoon, watching Simone work through a geometry problem while Hope played with blocks on a blanket nearby. "Have you thought about what you want to do after you get your GED?" "I've been thinking about that," Simone said, looking up from her work. "I love organizing. I love making spaces beautiful and functional. Do you think I could learn interior design or home organization?" "Absolutely. There are certification courses online for that too. You could build a real career." Simone felt excitement flutter in her chest. A career. Not just a job but a real career. It seemed impossible, but then again 6 months ago she would have said living in a mansion seemed impossible too. "Mrs. Patterson, can I ask you something?" "Of course, dear. When will Mr. Bennett be back?" "It's been 2 weeks. I keep expecting him to walk through the door." Mrs. Patterson smiled. "He called me last week. The business deal in Singapore is taking longer than expected. He'll be gone at least another week, maybe 2. He asked about you and Hope." Simone's heart beat faster. "What did you tell him?" "I told him the truth. That you're taking excellent care of his home. That you're working hard to better yourself. That you're exactly the kind of person Rebecca would have loved to help." Mrs. Patterson's eyes twinkled. He was very pleased to hear it. After Mrs. Patterson left, Simone took Hope to the community center she had found online. It was a 20-minute walk, but the weather was nice, and Simone had found a good stroller in one of the upstairs closets, left over from some previous time, perhaps when Rebecca had hoped to have children. The parenting class was small, just 5 other mothers with babies around Hope's age. The teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, was warm and knowledgeable. She taught them about developmental milestones, proper nutrition, and ways to encourage learning through play. During the break, one of the other mothers, a woman named Tasha, approached Simone. "Your daughter is beautiful," Tasha said, smiling at Hope. "Thank you. So is your son. I've seen you here the past couple weeks. Are you new to the neighborhood?" Simone hesitated, then decided on a version of the truth. "I'm staying with a family friend while I get back on my feet." "Good for you. It's hard doing this alone." Tasha shifted her baby boy to her other hip. "A few of us meet at the park on Thursdays if you want to join. It helps to have other moms to talk to." "I'd like that," Simone said, and she meant it. She had been alone for so long. Having friends, people to talk to, seemed like another impossible gift. That night, after Hope was asleep, Simone sat in the sunroom, the place that had been Rebecca's favorite. She had cleaned it the first week and had been drawn back to it every evening since. There was something peaceful about the space with its big windows and comfortable furniture. She had brought books down from Christopher's office, careful to mark each one so she could return it to exactly the right spot. Tonight she was reading about basic interior design principles. Color theory, space planning, furniture arrangement. It all fascinated her. As she read, her phone buzzed. She had bought a simple smartphone with Christopher's credit card, something she needed for her online classes and to stay in contact with Mrs. Patterson. The number calling was unfamiliar. "Hello," she answered cautiously. "Hello, is this Simone Jackson?" The voice was male, professional, with a slight accent. "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Christopher Bennett. I believe you're staying at my house. Simone's heart jumped into her throat. Mr. Bennett? Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything. Mrs. Patterson speaks very highly of you. She says you've been taking excellent care of the place. I'm trying. I want to earn what you've given me. There was a pause. Simone, I didn't give you my home so you could earn it. I gave it to you because you and Hope needed help. I know, but I can't just take without giving something back. That's not right. Christopher's voice was gentle when he spoke again. My wife used to say the same thing. She never could accept a gift without trying to pay it back somehow. Mrs. Patterson told me about her. About Rebecca. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you. It's been hard. The house has been hard. I couldn't bear to be in it, but I couldn't bear to leave it either. It's a beautiful home, Simone said softly. She had good taste. I can see her touch everywhere. She did. She would have liked you, I think. Christopher cleared his throat. I'm calling because my trip has been extended again. Might be another 2 weeks. I wanted to make sure you're comfortable staying longer. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You're not imposing. Honestly, knowing someone is there taking care of the place makes me feel better. The house has been empty of life for too long. Then yes, Hope and I will stay. And Mr. Bennett? Thank you. You saved our lives. You saved your own lives, Christopher said. I just opened a door. After they hung up, Simone sat in the quiet sunroom, holding the phone and feeling grateful beyond words. She was starting to understand that accepting help didn't make her weak. It made her human. She looked around the sunroom, imagining Rebecca sitting here with her books and her plants. I'll take care of him, Simone whispered to the room to Rebecca's memory. I'll take care of your home and your husband. I promise. The house seemed to settle around her, warm and welcoming as if Rebecca's spirit approved. 3 weeks became 4. 4 became 5. Christopher's business in Singapore grew more complex with each passing day, and his return date kept shifting. He called once a week to check on the house and to talk to Simone. Their conversation started brief and professional but slowly became longer and more personal. Simone told him about her GED progress. She had completed the math section and was moving on to social studies. She told him about the parenting classes and the friends she was making at the park. She told him how Hope was thriving, how she had started to really laugh, how she reached for everything now with curious hands. Christopher told her about Singapore, about the business negotiations that seemed to stretch on forever. But he also told her about his life, about Rebecca, about how they had met in college and fallen in love over shared dreams of making the world better. About how her death had left him hollow. The house feels different now, he said during one call. Even from thousands of miles away I can feel it. It feels alive again. Hope is very loud, Simone joked. Maybe that's what you're sensing. Christopher laughed, and Simone realized it was the first time she had heard him really laugh. Maybe. But I think it's more than that. I think it's you. You're bringing light back into a dark place. Simone didn't know what to say to that, so she changed the subject to a problem with the garden sprinklers, which Christopher patiently helped her troubleshoot. Mrs. Patterson continued to visit twice a week, and she had become like a grandmother to Hope and a mother figure to Simone. She taught Simone to cook using the gourmet kitchen, showing her recipes that Rebecca had loved. She helped Simone enroll in an online certificate program for interior design and home organization. You have a real eye for this, Mrs. Patterson said one day, watching Simone rearrange the living room to better showcase Rebecca's art collection while also making the space more functional. You should consider making this your career. I am, Simone said. I've been taking notes on everything I do here. Every room I organize, every problem I solve. I'm building a portfolio. Smart girl. The truth was, Simone had fallen in love with the work. Each room in the house presented a new challenge. How to honor what was there while making it better. How to preserve memories while creating space for new life. She had transformed the unused guest rooms into functional spaces, one as a home office, another as a library, organizing Christopher's book collection by genre and author. She had also created a nursery for Hope in the room next to her own. Using Christopher's credit card carefully, she had bought a crib, a changing table and soft toys. She had painted the walls herself in a gentle yellow, spending Hope's nap times rolling paint and dreaming of the future. One Thursday afternoon, Simone met Tasha and 3 other mothers at the park. They sat on benches while their babies played on blankets in the grass. Well, the babies mostly just sat and grabbed at grass and each other, but it counted as playing. So Simone, Tasha said, you've been mysterious about where you're living? Spill. Simone had known this question would come eventually. She took a breath and told them the story. The rain, the baby, Christopher stopping to help, the keys to his house. The women stared at her in amazement. "That's incredible," said another mother, Kenji. "But also, how are you handling living in someone else's house? That must be stressful." "It is sometimes," Simone admitted. "I'm always worried I'll break something or do something wrong. But I'm trying to think of it as a job. I'm taking care of the house, and in return, Hope and I have a safe place to live while I get my education." "What happens when he comes back?" Tasha asked gently. It was the question Simone asked herself every night. "I don't know. We'll figure it out, I guess. He mentioned maybe hiring me permanently to manage the house, but I don't know if that will really happen." "You need to protect yourself," Kenji said. "What if he changes his mind when he gets back? Do you have a backup plan?" "Not really," Simone said. "But I'm trying to prepare for anything. I'm saving the stipend Mrs. Patterson convinced him to give me. Every penny. And I'm working as fast as I can on my GED and certificates. If I have to leave, I want to leave with skills and options." The women nodded approvingly. They spent the rest of the afternoon sharing advice, swapping baby stories, and laughing together. By the time Simone walked home, pushing Hope in the stroller, she felt stronger. She had friends now. A support system. That evening, Christopher called earlier than usual. It was morning in Singapore and he sounded tired. "I'm finally coming home," he said. "Next week. The deal is done." Simone's heart dropped and soared at the same time. "That's wonderful. You must be relieved." "I am. And nervous." "Nervous?" "I've been gone for over 5 weeks. What if the house doesn't feel like home anymore? What if coming back just reminds me of everything I've lost?" Simone thought carefully before answering. "Home isn't just a place. It's a feeling. And feelings can change. Maybe it won't feel like the home you left, but that doesn't mean it won't feel like home at all. Maybe it will feel like a new kind of home." Christopher was quiet for a moment. "You're wise, Simone Jackson. I've had a lot of time to think about home lately. What it means. What makes a place safe. Will you be there when I arrive? You and Hope. Do you want us to be?" "Very much. If you're comfortable with that." "We'll be here," Simone promised. "And Christopher? Thank you. For everything. For changing our lives." "Thank you for changing mine," he said softly. After hanging up, Simone walked through the house, seeing it with fresh eyes. She had cleaned every inch. Organized every closet. Brought life to every room. But more than that, she had filled it with care. With attention. With love. Rebecca smiled at her from the photos, and Simone felt, somehow, that she had kept her promise. She had taken care of this house and its owner, even from a distance. Now Christopher was coming home. And everything would change again. Christopher Bennett stood at the window of his hotel room in Singapore, looking out at the glittering skyline. It was 3 in the morning, but he couldn't sleep. In 12 hours he would board a plane home. Home to Los Angeles. Home to a house he had given to a stranger. The business deal had been brutal. Negotiations that should have taken 2 weeks had stretched to 5. There were cultural barriers to navigate, legal complexities to untangle, and moments when Christopher had been certain the whole thing would fall apart. But his team had persevered, and they had finally closed the acquisition that would expand Bennett Technologies into the Asian market. It should have felt like a victory. It was a victory. But all Christopher could think about was whether Simone and Hope were still at his house, and what it would be like to see them in person. He had talked to Simone every week, sometimes more. What had started as quick check-ins had evolved into real conversations. He knew about her GED progress, her struggles with algebra, her love of organizing spaces. He knew Hope was 7 months old now and had started trying to crawl. He knew Simone loved reading in the sunroom and that she had made friends at the park. But he didn't know what it would feel like to walk into his home and see them there. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Patterson, texting at an ungodly hour again. She never seemed to sleep. "Stop worrying. The house is beautiful. They are wonderful. You made the right choice. Now come home." Christopher smiled. Mrs. Patterson had been with him and Rebecca from the beginning. She had been Rebecca's choice, a housekeeper who became family. When Rebecca got sick, Mrs. Patterson had been there through every treatment, every hospital stay, every dark moment. After Rebecca died, Mrs. Patterson had kept coming, even though Christopher had barely been present in his own life. "You can't give up," she had told him once. Rebecca wouldn't want that. But he had given up, in a way. He had thrown himself into work, traveling constantly, avoiding the house and all its memories. He had been running for 2 years. Then he had seen Simone in the rain, holding her baby, and something had broken open inside him. Or maybe something had finally started to heal. His business partner, James Wu, had thought he was crazy when he explained what he had done. "You gave your house keys to a homeless woman?" James had said, staring at him over dinner their first night in Singapore. "Yes." "Your house keys? To your actual house?" "Yes." "Christopher, that's either the most generous or most foolish thing you've ever done." "Maybe both," Christopher had admitted. "But it felt right. Rebecca would have done it." James had nodded slowly. He had known Rebecca had been at their wedding. "Yeah, she would have. But that doesn't mean it's smart. What if this woman robs you blind? Then I'll have lost some things. But she and her baby will be warm and fed." James had shaken his head, but he had been smiling. "You're a good man, Christopher. I hope it works out." And it had worked out. Better than Christopher could have imagined. Mrs. Patterson's weekly reports had been glowing. Simone was responsible, hardworking, and kind. She was taking care of the house like it was her own. More than that, she was bringing it back to life. Christopher had extended his trip partly because of business, but partly because of fear. What if he went home and the magic broke? What if seeing Simone and Hope in person reminded him too painfully of what he had lost with Rebecca? What if they left? But he couldn't hide in Singapore forever. It was time to go home. The flight was long. Christopher tried to work, tried to sleep, tried to watch movies. Nothing held his attention. He kept thinking about that moment when he would open his front door and step inside. Would Simone be there? Would Hope? Or would he find a note saying they had moved on, thanking him for his generosity but explaining they couldn't stay? The thought made his chest tight. He realized, somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, that he wanted them to stay. Not just because they needed help but because the house needed them. He needed them. When the plane finally landed at LAX, Christopher felt like a nervous teenager on a first date. He collected his luggage, dismissed his driver's offer to take him home, and instead got into his own car that had been parked at the airport. He needed to drive himself. Needed the time to think. The city passed by outside his windows, familiar and strange at the same time. 5 weeks was a long time. Everything looked slightly different, or maybe he was the one who was different. He pulled into his driveway at 3 in the afternoon. The house looked exactly as it always had from the outside, white and imposing and elegant. But something about it seemed warmer, more welcoming. Christopher grabbed his suitcase and walked to the front door. His hand shook slightly as he put the key in the lock. He had told Simone he was coming today, but he hadn't given her an exact time. He wanted to see the house as it really was, not staged for his arrival. The door opened, and Christopher stepped into a home. The transformation Christopher saw when he walked through the door took his breath away. In his weeks of thinking about this moment, he had tried to prepare himself, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality. His house, which had been a mausoleum for 2 years, was alive. Simone appeared from the kitchen, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair pulled back, her face showing surprise and joy. In her arms was Hope, bigger than in the photo she had sent, with bright eyes and reaching hands. "Mr. Bennett," Simone said, walking toward him with a smile. "Welcome home." Christopher set down his suitcase. "Please call me Christopher. We've been talking on the phone for 5 weeks. I think we're past formalities." Hope babbled and reached toward him. Without thinking, Christopher held out his hands and Simone transferred the baby to him. Hope grabbed his nose and laughed, and Christopher felt something warm spread through his chest. "She's beautiful," he said. "The photos didn't do her justice." "She's been waiting for you," Simone said. "Every time the door opens, she looks to see if it's you." They stood there in the foyer, and Christopher looked around at his home. Everything was clean and organized, but more than that, it was thoughtful. The furniture had been arranged to maximize light and flow. The photos of Rebecca were displayed beautifully, honored but not overwhelming. Fresh flowers sat in vases. The air smelled like lemon and something baking. "Simone," Christopher said softly, "this is incredible. I hope I didn't change too much. I tried to keep everything Rebecca loved while making it functional and welcoming." "You succeeded. This is..." He trailed off, not sure how to express what he was feeling. This is what she would have wanted. A home, not a museum. They spent the afternoon talking. Simone showed him everything she had done, explaining each choice, showing him the record she had kept of every expense. She had spent his money carefully, with respect, always thinking about what was needed rather than what she wanted. Christopher stopped her when she tried to go through the financial details. "I trust you. Mrs. Patterson already sent me the summaries. You've been more than responsible." "I want you to know everything," Simone insisted. "I don't want there to be any questions or doubts." There aren't any. You've proven yourself beyond any doubt I might have had. Hope fell asleep in Christopher's arms, and he carried her upstairs to see the nursery Simone had created. When he saw the yellow walls, the careful organization, the love that had gone into every detail, he had to blink back tears. She's never had a room like this, Simone said quietly. Thank you for making it possible. You made it possible. I just provided the space. They went back downstairs and Simone offered him the dinner she had prepared. They ate together at the kitchen table, talking about his trip, her classes, Hope's development. It felt natural, comfortable, like they had been doing this for years instead of days. A week passed. Christopher settled back into his home, marveling daily at how different it felt. He went back to work at his office in downtown Los Angeles, but he looked forward to coming home in a way he hadn't in years. Simone and Hope were there, bringing warmth and life to every corner. He offered Simone a permanent position managing the house with a generous salary. She accepted with tears of gratitude. They drew up a formal arrangement. She would have her room in the nursery for as long as she wanted. She would manage the household, coordinate with Mrs. Patterson, and continue her education. In return, Christopher would pay her a salary that allowed her to save money and build toward independence. It was working beautifully until Christopher's brother arrived unannounced one Saturday morning. Thomas Bennett was 45, 3 years older than Christopher, and had always been the practical one in the family. He was a lawyer, successful and sharp, and he had never approved of what he saw as Christopher's excessive generosity. I heard about your house guest, Thomas said, walking into the house without knocking. He stopped when he saw Simone coming down the stairs with Hope on her hip. Thomas, Christopher said, standing from where he had been reading the paper. You could have called first. I wanted to see this situation for myself. Thomas's eyes moved from Simone to Hope and back to Christopher. So it's true. You gave your house to a homeless woman. Simone's face went very still. Christopher stepped forward, anger rising. I didn't give my house away. I offered help to someone who needed it. Simone works here now. She manages the household. Does she? Thomas's voice was skeptical. He turned to Simone. What exactly are your qualifications for managing a multimillion-dollar estate? I don't have formal qualifications, Simone said quietly, holding Hope closer. But I care for this home. I respect it, and I'm learning every day. Thomas, Christopher's voice was hard. That's enough. Is it? Christopher, you're my brother. I love you. But you've been making questionable decisions since Rebecca died. This, he gestured around, is just the latest example. You can't save everyone. You can't fix your grief by filling your house with strangers. Simone and Hope are not strangers. They're part of this household now. Thomas shook his head. For how long? What happens when she decides to sue you for something? What happens when she claims you owe her more than you agreed to? You're exposing yourself to massive liability. Then I'll deal with it, Christopher said. But I don't believe that will happen. Thomas looked at Simone for a long moment. She met his eyes steadily, even though Christopher could see her hands shaking slightly. Tell me something, Thomas said to her. Why should I believe you're not taking advantage of my brother's grief? You shouldn't believe anything about me, Simone said. You don't know me, but you know Christopher. You know he's smart and capable of making his own decisions. Maybe trust him to know what's right for his own life. Thomas blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Then, slowly, his expression softened slightly. Can I see what you've done with the house? He asked. Simone nodded and gave Hope to Christopher. Then she walked Thomas through each room, explaining her choices, showing him how she had honored Rebecca's memory while making the space functional. She answered his questions honestly, never defensive, just clear and direct. By the time they returned to the living room, Thomas looked thoughtful. I apologize, he said to Simone. I came here ready to dislike you, ready to protect my brother from what I thought was a mistake. But this house, it's beautiful. It's alive. Rebecca would have loved what you've done. Thank you, Simone said simply. Thomas turned to Christopher. You were right. I was wrong. I'm sorry I doubted you. You were being protective. I understand. After Thomas left, Simone sat on the couch, her hands still shaking. I thought he was going to demand I leave. He has no right to demand anything. This is my house, my decision. Christopher sat beside her. But I'm glad you stood up to him. You handled that with more grace than I would have. I've learned that getting defensive doesn't help. Just telling the truth and letting people make up their own minds works better. That evening, as Simone was putting Hope to bed, Christopher's phone rang. It was Thomas. I meant what I said. You made the right call. That woman is remarkable. I know, Christopher said. Don't screw this up. What do you mean? I mean, I saw how you look at her. And how she looks at you. Just, be careful. Make sure everyone's on the same page about what this is. After hanging up, Christopher sat in the quiet living room and admitted to himself what he had been trying not to acknowledge. He was developing feelings for Simone. Real feelings. Not just gratitude or protectiveness, but something deeper. And he had no idea what to do about it. 2 months after Christopher's return, the household had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Simone passed her GED exam with high scores, a moment of triumph that they celebrated with a cake Mrs. Patterson baked. Hope turned 9 months old and started crawling, getting into everything and making them both laugh with her determination to explore. Christopher found himself spending more time at home and less time traveling. He worked from his office in the house more often, enjoying the sounds of life around him. Hope's babbling, Simone humming as she worked, Mrs. Patterson's cheerful chatter when she visited. But something was shifting. The comfort between Christopher and Simone was growing into something else, something neither of them wanted to name but both felt. One evening after Hope was asleep, they sat together in the sunroom. It had become their habit, these quiet evening conversations. Simone would tell him about her day, her online courses in interior design, her friends from the park. Christopher would tell her about his work, his plans for the company, his memories of Rebecca. Tonight, though, Christopher seemed different. Quieter. More thoughtful. Simone, he said finally, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Hope's father. Do you ever think about him? Do you worry he'll come back? Simone was quiet for a moment. I used to worry about that. But no, I don't think he'll come back. When I told him I was pregnant, he said he wasn't ready to be a father. He gave me $500 and told me to take care of it. When I said I was keeping the baby, he left. I haven't heard from him since. I'm sorry. Don't be. If he had stayed, it would have been for the wrong reasons. Hope deserves better than a father who sees her as an obligation. She deserves the world, Christopher said. And so do you. The air between them felt charged. Simone looked at Christopher, really looked at him, and saw something in his eyes that made her heart beat faster. Christopher, she said carefully, what are we doing here? What do you mean? I mean this. We're not employer and employee, not really. We're not just housemates. So what are we? Christopher set down his coffee cup and turned to face her fully. I've been asking myself the same question. The truth is, Simone, I care about you. More than I should, maybe. More than is appropriate given our situation. Simone's breath caught. I care about you too. But I'm afraid. Of what? Of everything. I'm living in your house. You pay my salary. There's a power imbalance here. If something happened between us and it didn't work out, where would that leave me and Hope? I can't risk her stability for my feelings. You're right, Christopher said, and Simone felt her heart sink. There is a power imbalance. So we need to fix that before anything else can happen. How? You need to be truly independent. Not living here because you have nowhere else to go, but choosing to be here. Simone shook her head. I'm not ready for that. I'm still building my skills, still saving money. I know. But what if we made a plan? What if we set a timeline for you to get your own place, build your career, become fully independent? Then, if we both still feel this way, we can explore it without any power imbalance. How long? 6 months? A year? However long you need. Simone thought about it. The idea scared her. She had become comfortable here, safe. The thought of leaving, even with a plan, made her anxious. But she also knew Christopher was right. She couldn't build a real relationship from a place of dependence. 6 months, she said finally. In 6 months, I'll have my interior design certification finished. I'll have a year of experience managing this house. I'll have savings. I can look for my own place and start my own business. And then we'll see where we both are. If we still feel the same way, we can try. Really try as equals. Christopher reached out and took her hand. It was the first time they had touched beyond accidental brushes. His hand was warm, solid, safe. 6 months, he agreed. And in the meantime, we'll be friends. We'll work together. We'll raise Hope together in a way. But we'll keep appropriate boundaries. It was the right decision. The smart decision. So why did Simone feel like crying? The next morning, Simone's phone rang with an unfamiliar number. She answered cautiously. Simone Jackson? The voice was female, official. Yes. This is Karen Williams from the Child Welfare Services. We received a report about your living situation with your daughter. We need to do a home visit to ensure the child is in a safe environment. Simone's blood went cold. A report? From who? I'm not at liberty to say. Can we schedule a visit for tomorrow? After hanging up, Simone stood in the kitchen, shaking. Someone had reported her to child services. Someone thought Hope wasn't safe. Christopher found her there 10 minutes later, pale and frightened. When she told him what happened, his face went hard. This is Thomas. It has to be. He seemed okay when he left, but maybe he changed his mind. Maybe he thought this was the way to protect me. Will they take Hope? Simone's voice was barely a whisper. No, Christopher said firmly. Hope is healthy, happy, and clearly well cared for. This house is safe. You're a good mother. They'll see that. But I was homeless. What if they say I'm unfit? You're not homeless now. You have a job, a home, and you're building a future. We'll show them all of that. Mrs. Patterson, when she heard the news, was furious. If it was Thomas, I'll give him a piece of my mind. That boy never did know when to leave well enough alone. The home visit was scheduled for 2 o'clock the next day. Simone barely slept that night, going over every detail of Hope's care, making sure everything was perfect. When Karen Williams arrived, she was professional but not unkind. She walked through the house, examined the nursery, watched Simone interact with Hope. She asked questions about Simone's history, her current situation, her plans for the future. Christopher was present for part of the visit, explaining how Simone came to live there, how she had proven herself responsible and caring. He showed documentation of her employment, her GED, her ongoing education. After 2 hours, Ms. Williams closed her notebook. Ms. Jackson, I have to be honest. When I got this report, I expected to find a concerning situation. But what I've found is a child who is thriving, a mother who is working hard to provide, and a support system that is helping you succeed. She looked at Christopher. Mr. Bennett, your generosity is admirable. Ms. Jackson, your determination is impressive. So Hope can stay with me? Simone asked, her voice shaking. Absolutely. There's no cause for concern here. I'll be closing this case immediately. After Ms. Williams left, Simone burst into tears. Christopher held her while she cried, all the fear and tension of the past 24 hours pouring out. She's safe, Simone sobbed. Hope is safe. Of course she is. She's with her mother where she belongs. Later that evening, Thomas called Christopher. I need to apologize, Thomas said. I didn't make that report. I swear. But I know who did. Who? Apparently, someone saw Simone at the park and recognized her from when she was homeless. They thought you were taking advantage of her somehow, thought she was being coerced into staying with you. They called it in thinking they were helping. But the social worker cleared everything? Yes. I called to check. The case is closed. Simone and Hope are fine. Christopher felt the tension leave his body. It hadn't been malicious, just a misunderstanding. But it had been terrifying nonetheless. When he told Simone, she nodded slowly. I guess this is part of building a new life. People from my past seeing me now and not understanding how I got here. Does it bother you? A little. But Ms. Williams saw the truth. That's what matters. That night, as Simone put Hope to bed, she looked at her daughter's sleeping face and felt grateful beyond words. They had a home. They had safety. They had hope. And in 6 months, if everything went according to plan, they might have something even more. They might have love. 6 months passed like a dream and an eternity at the same time. Simone finished her interior design certification with top marks. She completed an advanced course in home organization. She built a portfolio of her work on Christopher's house, documenting every room transformation with before and after photos. More importantly, she saved money. Every penny of her salary that didn't go to Hope's needs went into a savings account. By the end of 6 months, she had enough for first and last month's rent on an apartment, a security deposit, and a cushion for emergencies. She also started getting clients. Word spread through her friends at the park and then through their friends. People who needed help organizing their homes, designing spaces, making their houses feel like homes. Simone took jobs on weekends, building her reputation and her business. Hope grew into a toddler, walking and babbling in what Simone swore were almost words. She had Christopher wrapped around her little finger. He bought her toys, played with her every evening, and read her stories before bed. He had become the father figure Hope needed, even though no one said it out loud. The boundaries between Simone and Christopher held. Barely. There were moments when their hands would brush and linger a second too long. Times when their eyes would meet and something electric would pass between them. But they kept their promise. They stayed friends. They waited. Mrs. Patterson watched it all with knowing eyes. You two are dancing around each other like teenagers, she said one Tuesday afternoon. It's sweet and frustrating at the same time. We made an agreement, Simone said. I know you did. And I respect it. But honey, don't wait so long that you miss your chance at happiness. On the 6-month mark, Simone found a small apartment 15 minutes away. It was nothing like Christopher's mansion. It was tiny, just 2 bedrooms, but it was clean and safe and affordable. She signed the lease and felt both proud and sad. You don't have to leave, Christopher said when she told him. You can stay here as long as you want. I need to do this, Simone said. For me. I need to prove I can stand on my own. You've already proven that. Then I need to feel it. I need to know that when I choose to be with someone, it's because I want to be, not because I have to be. Christopher nodded, understanding but clearly unhappy. When do you move? 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were bittersweet. Simone and Christopher spent every evening talking, making plans for how to stay connected. Hope would still see him regularly. Simone would continue to manage his house remotely, hiring a new daily housekeeper but overseeing all the major decisions. It wasn't an ending, they told each other. Just a transition. The day before Simone was set to move, Christopher asked her to meet him in the sunroom after Hope was asleep. She found him standing by the window, looking out at the garden that Simone had restored over the months. I want to show you something, he said. He led her outside to the garden. In the center, where Rebecca had always wanted a fountain but never got around to installing one, there was now a beautiful stone fountain with water flowing gently. Next to it was a bench with a plaque that read, "For Rebecca, who believed in second chances. And for Simone, who proved they're possible." Simone's eyes filled with tears. Christopher. Rebecca would have loved you, he said. She would have loved what you've done here. How you've honored her memory while making this place live again. This fountain is for both of you. For the women who taught me that generosity and hope can change everything. They sat on the bench, watching the fountain, and Simone realized she was saying goodbye to more than just a house. She was saying goodbye to a chapter of her life. The chapter where she was helpless and desperate. The chapter where she needed saving. Tomorrow would begin a new chapter. One where she was strong and independent. One where she chose her own path. The move happened on a sunny Saturday. Christopher and Thomas helped carry boxes. Mrs. Patterson brought food and supervised the organization of the kitchen. Hope toddled around the new apartment, exploring every corner. When everything was unpacked and everyone had left, Simone sat in her small living room and felt something unexpected. Joy. Pure, simple joy. This tiny apartment was hers. She had earned it. She had built a life from nothing, and this space was proof. 3 days later, Christopher asked her to dinner. Not at the house. Not as employer and employee or housemates or friends. A real date at a nice restaurant downtown. Simone wore a green dress she had bought for the occasion. Christopher wore a suit and brought flowers. They sat across from each other at a candlelit table, and for the first time in 6 months, they let themselves look at each other without holding back. I've been waiting for this, Christopher said. Me too. I want you to know, I'm not expecting anything. We can take this as slow as you need. We can just date and see where it goes. I know where I want it to go, Simone said. I want it to go toward a future. Together. You, me, and Hope. Christopher reached across the table and took her hand. I want that too. More than anything. They talked through dinner, sharing dreams and fears and hopes. They talked about what a future might look like. How they would balance Simone's growing business with Christopher's company. How they would raise Hope together. How they would honor Rebecca's memory while building something new. She would want you to be happy, Simone said. Mrs. Patterson told me that's all Rebecca ever wanted for you. Happiness and love. I think I'm finding both, Christopher said. Their relationship grew slowly and naturally. Dates on weekends. Family dinners during the week with Hope at the center. Christopher met Simone's clients and helped her strategize her business growth. Simone met Christopher's colleagues and supported his work. 6 months after Simone moved out, Christopher proposed. Not in a restaurant or some grand public gesture. He proposed in the sunroom, the place where they had spent so many evenings talking and dreaming. Hope was playing at their feet and the fountain was flowing outside and everything felt right. I love you, Christopher said, getting down on one knee. I love your strength, your kindness, your determination. I love how you turned a desperate situation into a triumph. I love how you love Hope. I love who I am when I'm with you. Will you marry me? Simone said yes through tears. Happy tears this time. The kind of tears that come from pure joy. They married in a small ceremony in the garden, by the fountain that honored both Rebecca and Simone. Mrs. Patterson cried. Thomas gave a speech about how wrong he had been and how grateful he was to be wrong. Hope was Flower Girl, toddling down the aisle in a pink dress, throwing petals everywhere but where they were supposed to go. Simone moved back into the mansion, but this time as Christopher's wife. They transformed the house together, keeping Rebecca's memory alive in the photos and the garden but adding new memories everywhere. Hope's first steps in the hallway. Family dinners in the kitchen. Laughter and life in every room. Simone's business grew. She became known as one of the best home organizers and interior designers in Los Angeles. She hired employees. She wrote articles for magazines. She built something substantial and lasting. But more than any professional success, she had built a family. Christopher adopted Hope legally and they talked about having more children. Not right away but someday. When the time was right. On Hope's first birthday after the wedding, they had a party in the garden. Friends, family, colleagues, everyone who had been part of their journey. As Simone watched Hope blow out her candle, held by Christopher, surrounded by love, she thought back to that rainy night 2 years ago. She had been desperate then. Homeless. Holding her baby under torn cardboard and thinking she had failed at everything. She had thought her life was over before it really began. But then a stranger had stopped in the rain. A man who had lost everything had seen someone who needed help and given her a chance. Not just shelter but dignity. Not just money but trust. Not just charity but opportunity. And she had taken that chance and built a life. A real, beautiful, full life. What are you thinking about? Christopher asked, coming to stand beside her with Hope on his hip. About rain, Simone said, taking his hand. About kindness. About how one moment can change everything. Best moment of my life, stopping for you that night. Best moment of mine too. Saying yes. They kissed while Hope giggled and the fountain flowed and the sun shone down on the garden where lost souls found their way home. Because sometimes, love doesn't announce itself with fireworks and grand gestures. Sometimes it starts with a simple act of kindness on a rainy night. Sometimes it grows slowly, carefully, between two broken people learning to be whole again. Sometimes it's built on trust and respect and the courage to accept help when you need it. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, it becomes everything. Years later, when people asked Simone how she built her successful business, she always told them the truth. She told them about being homeless, about the rain, about Christopher stopping when he didn't have to. About accepting help even though it scared her. About working hard to earn what was given. About the power of kindness to change lives. So what's the secret to success? Someone asked her once at a business conference where she was speaking. Simone thought about it. She thought about Christopher's keys in her hand, about Mrs. Patterson's wisdom, about Hope's laugh, about the fountain in the garden. She thought about Rebecca, who she had never met but who had raised a man capable of extraordinary kindness. She thought about Thomas learning to trust, about her friends at the park, about every person who had helped along the way. The secret, she said, is to accept help when it's offered. To work hard to honor the trust people place in you. To believe that tomorrow can be better than today. And to remember that kindness, real kindness, changes everything. Changed my life. It can change yours too. In the audience, Christopher sat with Hope, now 5 years old and starting kindergarten. He smiled at his wife on stage, this woman who had transformed not just his house but his entire life. This woman who had taught him that grief doesn't have to be forever. That love can come in unexpected forms. That stopping in the rain for a stranger isn't foolish. It's everything. They went home that night to the mansion that was no longer sad, no longer empty, no longer a museum to the past. They went home to a house filled with life and laughter and love. They went home to Hope and to the new baby Simone was carrying, due in 4 months. They went home to Mrs. Patterson, who still came twice a week because she was family now. They went home to Thomas and his wife, who had become regulars at Sunday dinners. They went home to the garden with its fountain, where water flowed endlessly, a reminder that life goes on. That pain transforms into something beautiful if you let it. That second chances are real. And as they sat on the bench by the fountain, Hope playing in the grass, the sun setting over Los Angeles, Simone and Christopher knew they had found something rare and precious. They had found home. Not in a place but in each other. Not in walls and rooms, but in trust and love and the daily choice to be kind. And it had all started with keys in the rain and a man who stopped when he didn't have to. Sometimes that's all it takes. Just one person, one moment, one choice to help. And everything changes. Forever.